on and off and logged that.
Okay. And he done that?
Again, according to his evidence,
That's right.
he did 3 head counts.
Correct. And that couldn't be right because we know that a person was missing. In fact, the head counts were wrong.
Also, Chair, the log was altered after the police contacted him. So everything about this, it just gets worse and worse.
So why wasn't the... Why,
There's a grieving widow and 3 kids.
Yeah, I know it's not your
Understand
decision.
that,
I know it's not your decision. But is it your obligation to present a brief to the Director of Prosecutions?
Senator, if we intend for a prosecution, we will present a brief.
All right,
to
so
the
did you on
DPP.
this occasion present a brief?
On this occasion, we did not.
Okay,
present
and why was that decision taken?
The decision was taken
And by whom?
following...
You've got the delegated authority over a decision like that?
In this case, it was at the manager inspections, I think.
No, but you are the CEO. Are you the most senior executive?
The requirement is now that I would certainly be making that decision.
No, but at that time, who had the authority as the CEO? Well, firstly, did you involve yourself in this process at the time, given the nature of it? Did you look at the evidence? Did you talk to your officers? Did you have them report to you and periodically and then finally in relation...
Senator, certainly the discussions and the evidence that was available at the time was that a brief
Mr.
of
Kingley,
evidence...
let's get there. You can add that on the end.
And the brief...
Did they, sir, or did they not report to you periodically about the advance of their investigation into this incident? Did you receive briefings as the CEO? Oh, that's a big no, that one.
Senator, certainly the decision was made not to proceed to prosecution on the evidence that was available at the time.
Sir, we're going to keep going. I chair this show. Have a look at the clock. It's 8:15. We're going till 11. Just you and me. Did you or did you not get briefings of any of your staff during the course of their investigation as to the progress of their inquiry?
Senator, I will have to go back and check my records to see if
Well,
at
let me
the
ask you
time,
another way.
because
sir.
this was in 2016.
Did we have a fatality? How many of these do your people investigate in a calendar year?
Certainly, so far this year, Senator, there are 2 cases which are under investigation.
Okay. So you're telling me, Mr. Kinley, that you have no independent recollection. There's only 2 cases in the calendar year. You have no independent recollection of whether you were briefed or not by any of your staff at any time in relation to this investigation.
Senator, I've certainly had briefings at the time.
There we are.
And
Thank
I
you.
certainly...
Thank you. Who provided you with those briefings and how frequent were they?
Again, Senator, there were... I can't tell you exact frequency, but certainly there were various discussions held, and there were certainly other...
Who briefed you, Mr. Kinley?
One of my managers of our inspections.
And his name?
Senator, the manager of that area is a gentleman by the name of David Marsh.
All right. So, using your independent recollection, and we're talking about the
1066.
How many times did Mr. Marsh brief you? Was it
Senator,
more than one? We'll go steady here because I know you're having trouble with your memory. Was it more than one occasion?
There would have been discussions on certainly...
No, sir.
There was various...
Your independent recollection. I want you to think about it, and if you can't remember, you say to me, I can't remember. I want you to rely upon your independent recollection. Then we're going to send you off to your diary. Did Mr. Marsh brief you more than once?
Senator, there would have been discussions more than once.
Do you independently remember that, Mr. Kinley? Jesus, sir.
No, Senator.
You don't remember being briefed more than once?
I certainly remember discussing it more than once, but there was...
No. So
there was-
there's a difference between discussing this and having a briefing. I just want to get this on the record because I had a witness like you once before. They're not with us anymore. Do you have an independent recollection in relation to this fatality of which your organisation that you operate was investigating more than once? Now, your answer is you do not have any recollection of having been briefed by Mr. Marsh more than once. That's your evidence today. I want you to put your thinking cap on to think whether there may have been more than one occasion on your independent memory, sir.
Senator, there was certainly more than one discussion. There were...
But you can't remember them. Because if you could, you would give me a number here in answer to my question.
Well,
how many times?
I cannot give you a number, Senator.
No. All right. So the only one that your independent memory reminds you of is once. What's the protocol now for Mr. Marsh? Is he the responsible officer in your organisation to oversight the investigation, or did he conduct the investigation?
Mr. Marsh is still a manager in that inspection area. As I explained to the committee in correspondence, we have revised our procedures in that area.
Well, thank you for that, and I'll be interested to touch on that a bit later on. Who conducted the investigation in your organisation?
Investigation into...
That would be the death of the man. Sir, are you having a loan of me? Seriously? The subject matter that you and I are talking about at the moment is the death of a man off 1066. Who in your organisation conducted that investigation?
There were several investigators.
Can you give me their
involved.
names, please?
Senator, only one of them is still working for
Doesn't
the
matter.
organisation.
Not interested whether they've gone to heaven.
And I think there was Mandy Nixon
Mandy Nixon.
and... No. And one other officer whose name I will have to...
All right,
give you.
well, I'll put a question mark here. What was Mandy Nixon's position within the organisation?
She was one of our investigators.
She's one of the investigators, and the other unknown person is also one of the investigators.
Was, yes.
Correct. How many investigators does your organisation have?
Senator, I'll have to take that on notice now.
Can you, how many people in your organisation?
Senator, there's 429.
Right.
There are dedicated investigators. There are also marine surveyors and inspectors who have investigatory
the
roles as
sort of
well.
investigator I'm talking about is someone who you dispatch on a 1066 issue. Who do they report to?
And Senator, also at the time that this incident happened, AMSA was not responsible for the full service delivery under the national system.
Fair enough. Who does Ms Nixon report to?
Mr. David Marsh.
No one in between them?
No.
So what's Mr. David Marsh's? You did describe it. I just want to make a note of it now.
He was our manager of that inspections area.
Manager of inspections area.
Investigations, sorry.
Of investigations. Do you have any sense? Is he report then directly to you?
No.
He does not. Who does he report to between you?
Now he...
No, at the time of this, sir.
At the time...
Reported
to the National Operations Manager at the time.
Sorry?
He reported to the National Operations Manager
And
at the
who
time.
was that?
And that was Mr. Brian Hemming.
Brian Hemming. Now, did Hemming report directly to you?
And he reported to the General Manager of Domestic Vessels,
And that was
Mr. John Flayton.
John Clayton.
Flayden. Fladun.
Okay. He was the General Manager of what? Domestic Vehicles.
Domestic Vessels.
Okay. Now, and Mr. Flayden reported directly to you?
Yes.
That's the next line of command. Now, let me just run down these. How many conversations, or did Mr. Flayden ever brief you about 1066?
Senator, I do not know. I cannot recollect.
You can't recall whether he did or didn't?
And
Did
there was-
Mr...
Senator, could I also explain that When this incident happened, there was various, apart from the investigation into the fatality, there was also federal court action that took place in relation to prohibiting the other vessels to operate, and there was quite a few other
Sure.
legal actions that were taking
I
place
appreciate
at that time.
Mr. Flayden, you don't remember. Can you remember whether, who was next along?
Mr. Hemming.
Mr. Hemming? Can you remember whether Mr. Hemming ever briefed you in relation to this matter?
And again, Senator, I know there were discussions, but I cannot recollect exactly how
All right.
many.
Let's make sure we both understand what I mean by briefing. Come in. I want to bring you up to date on the investigation in relation to 1066, a matter that I imagine you were intimately interested to monitor, given your role in running this organisation. So that's what I call a briefing, right? Not in the tea room saying, oh, I was doing a bit on 1066 yesterday, or in a general conversation, one of 100 issues. This is about keeping you, the CEO, intimately appraised of the progress of the investigation. All right? So we know that you can't recall Mr. Flayden doing that, you can't recall Mr. Hemming doing that, and then we have Mr. Marsh, where you have a recollection of one briefing. On that recollection, what did Mr. Marsh, and when was that briefing relative to the death and the decision not to put a brief to the department, the DPP?
Senator, I can't recollect that. I
You
would have
can't
to go
recollect,
and look through
okay.
all the legal actions that were taking place at that time.
Does it follow then that the